country's non-oil sector and foreign exchange reserves. The Nigerian economy is no doubt going through a tough period with unresolved macroeconomic issues such as imported inflation, huge debt-to-service revenue ratio, high exchange rates, forex issues, naira scarcity, and fuel scarcity, devaluation of the currency, budget deficit of 12 trillion naira in 2023, removal of fuel subsidy on petroleum price, insecurity and uncertainty about the outcome of a lot of contending issues of the forthcoming elections is also topical. Everyone is saying one thing or the other about that. Now, this macroeconomic instability has continued to hinder the growth and development of the nation's fragile economic outlook, leading to consistent in the foreign direct investment, weak operating environment, an increase in poverty and unemployment rates. As the country looks forward to the change of leadership after the 2023 elections, analysts are hopeful that the new administration will put in place a comprehensive framework for moving the fiscal policy agenda forward with attention to revenue, tax policy, expenditure, and financing. Joining me via Zoom to do a critical look at some current macroeconomic issues ahead of an election. He is a partner at Deloitte Nigeria, Mr. Olumide Esan. It's good to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Good afternoon, Tolu. Thanks for having me, and good afternoon, viewers.
I'd like us to start with the big one. Before I talk about what the naira and all of the challenges that we face along that space, inflation, we saw a deceleration in December. And many are saying that that doesn't really mean, because we saw that even the central bank still went up with their hawkish way, as there was an increase in the NPR one way or the other, standing at 17.5% as we speak. In your thoughts, first, what is your take? What kind of inflation are we really grappling with that seems to fail to hit to all of the methods being administered by the Apex Bank? We seem not to be getting it right because the figure still stays high.
Well, thanks, Tolu, once again. I think this is a global crisis around the world. All the countries are dealing with, inflationary pressure, and I think it's not limited to Nigeria. However, we have got our own peculiar issues. At 21.34, I agree that it's been a little bit of moderation from 21.47 that we had in the previous month. Just take a look around the world. The EU area, it's 8.5%, down from 9.2. The UK, 10.5%, down from 10.7. The US, 6.5%, down from 6.7. So the trend around the world is that inflation is, beginning to tip. And if you look at Ghana, 54% is an outlier. But the reality is, around the world, the Federal Reserve banks, equivalents of the central banks, have all been trying to employ, an inflation-busting, interest rate rise over the months. Nigeria, in the past months, have increased interest rates by 6%, which is why we are at 17.5% now. But it hasn't really arrested inflation. Around the world, UK, Andrew Bailey's Bank of England yesterday raised rate again to 5% by 50 basis points. US did this to 4.75. Ghana is at 28%. And the question you ask yourself is, with this high interest rate around the world, and including Nigeria, why has inflation not been tamed? The reason is very simple. Interest rates will literally help you to manage demand-pull inflation, but that's not what we have around the world right now. What we have is much of, cost push factor driven inflation. So, supply side issues, supply chain disruptions, high energy costs, in the case of Nigeria, food insecurity. So these are supply side, cost push issues that interest rate is not capable of actually dealing with. And that is why, Eventually, there will be a decline in inflation in Nigeria and indeed across the world, but it will take much longer because the issues are not really being dealt with. Rather, we've all focused on, on addressing and employing the tool of interest rate. Across, 2022 in average, Nigeria averaged around 18.7% in interest in inflation. So you see that where we ended and where we started in 2023 is not so far from the average we had in 2022. So it's something that must be addressed, but I think we need to look at what are the specific issues that are driving the cost. For example, in Nigeria, we have the high energy cost issue, diesel. As we speak, people can't even get, petrol to buy. Unless we start to address, how we bring down the cost of energy in Nigeria, we really can't tame inflation. I think the other thing to note is if you look at the core inflation, if you look at the food basket, it's 23.75, although slightly down from the 24.13 we had in the previous month. 23.75 is the main reason why the overall inflation rate, is 21.34. So the real issue around, costs, the issues around supply chain disruptions, which is impacting the supply side, food insecurity, which is impacting the supply side, are the reasons why we are dealing with inflation. Not necessarily because people are asking or, there's an effective demand for more products in the market.
A good way to start the discussion, but I'll take you straight to some monetary policy moves that many Nigerians would, or should I say, are not really happy with. And the big one is the new naira notes. We know what is happening to the redesigned naira notes, yes. Because even as a person, I know what it is to get that note at the moment. I think getting the dollars is almost easier than getting the naira at the moment. Someone asked me this morning, what is the rate for naira to naira as at today? But what do you think about that initiative or that policy by the Apex Bank? Should I say, and the timing? Because everyone is worried. A country just coming out of economic issues, recovering from COVID, a lot of economic projections that are not looking too good. Now we are doing this, and it's almost getting to a cash crunch. People can't even get monies, their own monies in the bank.
So let me start by saying I don't have the new notes. So I joined the millions of Nigerians to say, I don't have the new notes.
Let me believe you.
The other time I was hungry, I sent someone to help me get some snacks. And the person got into the supermarket and said, oh, sorry, I couldn't withdraw money from the ATM. I said, so do transfer. He said, the networks are down. I can't transfer money. So literally, I went hungry. Now, let's look at it this way. Legally speaking, the CBN is empowered to be able to do currency redesign as from time to time. But also, the famous Section 20 of the CBN Act also provides that, people would and should always be able to exchange their old notes even after it has ceased being legal tender. I think just like every other thing, it's about implementation, really. United Kingdom in June 2021 changed some of their notes to polymer, particularly the £50 note and the £20 note. And the last day for the use of the old note was designated as September 2022. Remember, they set the tone June 2021. So, if you look at the difference between the way they have implemented this and the way theirs is 15 months and ours, 90 days or 100 days as a case may be. I mean, Nigeria is a big country. 774 local governments and so many villages, and remote places and places where cash is still the basic, source of exchange. Not much of apps, not much of cards, and not much of e-transactions. So the challenge is the timeline which we have set for ourselves. And I think the irony of this is that, the World Bank did not set this timeline. The IMF did not set this timeline. We set this timeline ourselves, and we're putting ourselves under pressure. And people can't, get fuel to buy. Some of the stations that are selling fuel are insisting on only collecting new naira notes. People can't get new naira notes. So I can basically, identify with the frustrations of many Nigerians at this point in time. And one could only hope that things get better in the coming days.
The president has actually asked for 7 days. But let me ask you, what impact could this have on the economy where there's no money to spend? I saw a headline this morning that Nigerians are reducing social life because of the scarcity of naira. What does this mean if it continues this way? Yes, let's just agree. Let's assume it continues like this because the president has asked for 7 days. And I can tell you that what I've seen today is what I saw yesterday. Long queues. People are aggressive. People are getting angry by the day. They need monies. Even the stories online now for a pregnant woman that needed monies. A lot of stories we can go on and on. But what does this mean if we continue like this, Mr. Esan?
So first, I do not wish that it continues like this. So I really hope that it does get better. But I think from a commercial and economics point of view,
yes, please.
There are still, a lot of people who earn their livings, via cash-based transactions. If you go to the villages, those who go to buy the yams, and the palm oils, and the bananas and the plantains they bring to the cosmopolitan cities, these are still largely cash-based, not transfer. Those who go into the villages, to buy from the cooperatives, they are still largely cash-based. So what is happening is they're killing those businesses. Let me paint one picture here. If you've been driving along Lagos roads in the last few days, you will see that the hawkers are basically disappearing from the road. The reason being that with the hawker on the road during traffic, you can't do transfer. You can only do cash sales. And because people don't have cash on them, there are no patronages on the road, nobody to patronize them. And because nobody's patronizing them, it also means if you look at their own value chain, they also can't offtake from their suppliers. The suppliers can't offtake from the villages. So you're essentially paralyzing the economic system with what is happening. I think the one that is even more concerning for me is the fact that using this example of this, workers on the road, they are largely able-bodied men. You have to be able-bodied to be able to, trade on the road because it's a lot of energy. You're running, some of them could chase a car up to, 1 kilometer just to, even 2 kilometers just to make a sale. The jobless are home day one, they can't feed. Day two, they can't feed. Day three, they start to think of something else to do. So there might be security implication of having this, extended beyond what, ordinary Nigerians can cope with. Because, they can't feed, they can't eat. They're going to look for something else to do. Something that would fetch easy naira, using the skills that are inherent in them being able-bodied men and women. So it's not just about the economy, but it's also about, security of lives and properties. The last thing you want to see is increase in road crimes, the robberies on the road and all of that. So there is a lot to be worried about, and that's why, as Nigerians, we all must work together to ensure that we are where we are now, but we need to move out from where we are.
Yes, I know we're not talking politics on this show. We're talking business, but let's set a business agenda, or let's set an economic agenda for whoever becomes the next Nigeria CEO. It seems like there's a lot in the plate for the president to grapple with. Where do you think we'll start from? Well, let's try to just, set an agenda, an economic agenda. Are there any quick wins for anybody that becomes president? Everyone keeps saying subsidy has to go. But when subsidy goes, what happens?
Yes, I don't think that subsidy is a quick win. I believe subsidy must go and must be top agenda for, the next government. But subsidy cannot go unless there is a sustainable palliative plan in place for the vulnerable. It goes together. It must go together unless you want to have, escalated security situation in your hand or civil unrest. So I believe that any incoming government should have something to offer, in place of subsidy. We all know that, 75% of that subsidy is spent on elites. But you see, that 25% that is, back there, you have to protect them. You have to create alternative for them. So, subsidy is an easy thought through one, but then not exactly easy to implement because you must have that other solution for it to go together. I think the other one that is similar to subsidy is power. And I think for power, I think you just need to remove every form of government support or subsidy on this. You need to ensure that what people pay is cost reflective, and that is important because it goes right across the value chain, up to the generating companies, and up to the gas suppliers for the generating companies. And if you really truly want to you want to commercialize Nigerian gas, resources, you must ensure that people pay the right price for use of power. That is the only way people will be motivated to invest their money at the upstream to produce gas. Knowing fully well that they will realize the value for that gas. So you address the issue of subsidy, you address the issue of power, then you go to the big elephant, which is the exchange rate. You must collapse the multiple exchange rates. I know that around the world, countries still protect their currencies one way or another, but not by operating multiple. In the case of Nigeria, the official rate is probably half of what the black market is. That disparity is just too huge to live with, and it's not good for business. So the issue of exchange rate must be dealt with. Then is insecurity, and the new government must convene a national summit to look at multi-pronged approach to address insecurity in Nigeria. I mean, state police should be an option on the table as well. Any good idea that would help tame insecurity in Nigeria is welcome, because some reports has it that we need $800 billion over the next 10 years. That averages 80 billion a year. In fact, some put it as 100 billion a year, $100 billion a year to spend on infrastructure. So whoever is coming in has quite a lot of work to do. But I think that Nigerians, without the patience, if only the incoming government will at least address us as Nigerians and show us the blueprint, what exactly you want to do, and put some timelines to them so that we know what to expect when, and hold you accountable to your promises.
That's a lot of work to be done there, but let's see how it all plays out. Maybe just if we can do this in 2 minutes, I'd like to ask you regards to, it's a common question, though, our monetary and fiscal side working in tandem to be able to achieve the aim of a stabilized economy. Some believe that they're just working, separately. Everyone is just doing what he or she wants to do, and sometimes they tend to want to synergize. How much of a synergy do you see between fiscal policy and our monetary policy?
So thanks. So let me just say this. Whilst you and I are not there, the CBN or the Ministry of Finance, so we don't know what sort of meetings they have and how they coordinate themselves. But what is visible to us from what we are seeing is that that coordination is not perfect. It's not efficient. It's not what we would like to see. I would expect that for a new government, through either Office of the Chief Economic Advisor or the National Economic Council, there must be some coordination, okay? There must be, the two policy-making bodies, fiscal and monetary, must work hand in hand to make things work. The efforts must complement one another. One is responsible to manage, money flow, and inflation. The other is responsible to manage government expenditure, macroeconomics, employment. So they must work together as two hands of the same government, yet each maintaining their own independence, because across the world, the Reserve Bank must have some level of independence. But the president sets the agenda, what he or she wants to achieve. And then these other parties must conform, must align and work together. If a government comes, for example, and say, look, I really, really, truly want to just develop the power sector, I would expect the Minister of Finance to come up with policies and fiscal policies, including tax breaks, and incentives to support, to encourage investment in power sector. But I also expect the central bank, from the monetary policy point of view, to make credit available to investors, in the power sector. That is how you get the two to work together to achieve the results. Not, what we see right now, it doesn't appear as though we're really optimizing that opportunity for the two policy, bodies working together. We don't seem to be benefiting a lot from that combination at this point in time. I think it's been a struggle for most Nigerians, and I think if you ask anyone from the east to west, north or south, they're going to have the same views in terms of we've not had the best of working together of the Ministry of Finance and Central Bank.
I must thank you so much. Mr. Olumide Esan, our next conversation will be around the power sector, years after privatization. I think there's a lot you have in that. We need to explore in that space. That's our next discussion. We'll have a date on that on the show. Thank you so much. Mr. Olumide Esan is a partner with Deloitte Nigeria. Thank you and do have a great weekend.
Same to you. Thank you. Bye.
All right then. Well, coming up on the show, let's discuss this lingering